Here's what you need to know to understand the Trump-Ukraine scandal. House Democrats have finally crossed the Rubicon to a formal impeachment process based on a stunning admission from President Trump that he asked a foreign government to dig up dirt on a political rival. In this case, Joe Biden. That is an abuse of power of his office, and enough to get Nancy Pelosi to initiate formal impeachment proceedings against him. Here are 5 things to keep in mind about the Trump-Ukraine scandal. According to a call summary released by the White House, on July 25th, President Trump asked the new Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, to look into false allegations that Joe Biden stopped Ukraine from prosecuting his son. Let me back up and identify all the players here. We're talking about 2015 and 2016, when Joe Biden was still vice president. His son, Hunter Biden, was serving on the board of a Ukrainian oil and gas company called Burisma. The prosecutor-general of Ukraine at the time was a man named Viktor Shokin, and he was investigating Burisma. But he was not investigating Hunter Biden specifically, and he definitely wasn't investigating Joe Biden. So point number 1, Trump's claims are wholly wrong. He and Rudy Giuliani have been trying to gin up this fake story to make Biden and his family look bad, even more so since Biden officially kicked off his 2020 campaign. But Ukrainian prosecutors have said as recently as May 2019 that they had no evidence of wrongdoing by Biden or his son. So keep this in mind when you're hearing about Ukraine's investigation into the Bidens. That investigation never existed. A more accurate way of saying it is that Trump is trying to fabricate an investigation into the Bidens. Okay, so Viktor Shokin is investigating Burisma. What was happening at the time is that Joe Biden, along with the rest of the US government, European governments, and the International Monetary Fund, were trying to get Shokin fired as prosecutor-general because they didn't think he was doing a good enough job investigating corruption. Let me say that more plainly. VP Biden was actually pushing for better oversight of Ukraine, and specifically, better oversight of Burisma, the company connected to his son. Trump and Giuliani are trying to spin this in the opposite way, but if you check news reports from that time, you'll see the real reason Biden was trying to get Shokin fired. Even people involved at the time are speaking up about it now too. This tweet from Congressman Tom Malinowski says, "I was an assistant secretary of state when this happened. All of us working on Ukraine wanted this prosecutor gone because he was not prosecuting corruption. So did the Europeans, so did the IMF. This didn't come from Joe Biden. He just delivered our message." It's also pretty rich that Trump and Giuliani are now trying to pretend they care about corruption in Ukraine, because Trump literally hired the guy who was paid millions of dollars by the previously very corrupt president to lobby on his behalf, and he did not disclose that to the US government. That's just one reason why Paul Manafort, Trump's former campaign manager, is sitting in prison right now. Okay. So corruption is and has been a real problem in Ukraine, stretching back decades. Who was Volodymyr Zelensky? He won the presidential election in April 2019, specifically because he ran on an anti-corruption platform. He wanted to drain Ukraine's swamp, so to speak. Zelensky has been put in a really difficult position here, because his reputation is as an anti-corruption leader. But right at the beginning of his term, he's being pressured by the President of the United States to fabricate an investigation for political purposes. Zelensky is also an inexperienced politician, and he has a lot to prove. He was actually a TV comedian before he was elected president. He had a TV show where he played the president and prioritized rooting out corruption. And then he did it in real life, and it worked. The mind boggles. But at the same time that this request from Trump about the Bidens was being made, Zelensky was trying to get military aid from the US government. Remember, there is a war going on in eastern Ukraine. It began when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and annexed Crimea. Since then, they've been trying to take control of eastern Ukraine as well. Zelensky needs the US and Europe's help in fighting back. Days before this fateful phone call, Trump instructed his administration to withhold almost $400 million in military aid to Ukraine. That's aid that Ukraine desperately needs. When Zelensky brings up this aid on the call, Trump's next words are, quote, "I would like you to do us a favor." That sounds like a quid pro quo. Ukraine helps Trump, then Trump helps Ukraine. It's important to remember that Trump abused the power of the presidency just by asking Zelensky to look into the Bidens in the first place. That is impeachable on its own. You don't even need proof of a quid pro quo, but it's there, and Trump has also recently said on camera,
"Why would you give money to a country that you think is corrupt?"
Which seems to indicate he was knowingly withholding the aid on purpose. Okay, bear with me, we're almost to the end here. The fourth point to remember is that this was actually all being done in the open for months, but it wasn't getting a ton of press coverage. Giuliani has been openly talking since earlier this year about getting Ukraine to look into the Bidens. This is important because it means there's really no way for them to believably lie about this. Which brings me to my last point, number 5. Giuliani, Attorney General Bill Barr, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Vice President Mike Pence are all very much implicated in this scandal. Trump is getting a lot of the oxygen for understandable reasons, but there's evidence that Barr, Pompeo, and Pence all acted outside the bounds of their office in order to push Trump's anti-Biden agenda in Ukraine. Their possibly also impeachable behavior should not be getting lost in this. So those are your 5 things to remember. Disinformation coming straight from the White House is kicking into high gear on this one, as well as projection. Trump is again trying the tactic of trying to deflect criticism of his corruption by pointing fingers at Biden and saying he's the corrupt one. But Congress has all the evidence that it needs, and it can't be ignored.